Bennis is the Program Director at the Institute for Policy Studies and the author of Understanding Palestine and Israel. She joins us now from Washington, D.C. Really good to have you with us, Phyllis. Trump's public dismissal of annexation efforts marks a rare moment of pushback against Israeli lawmakers. What do you think is driving this shift in tone from a leader who's historically seen as deeply pro-Israel?
Well, I think it has everything to do with his interest in maintaining the relationships with a number of Arab governments, particularly the Gulf states, to maintain, as your earlier commentators have said, the commitment to the phase 2 of the so-called peace plan, which does not actually call, we should note, for a Palestinian state. It talks about a roadmap to a Palestinian state, the trajectory towards, a pathway towards, but it does not call for a Palestinian state. It's also important, I think, to recognize that this is not just a shift away from traditional support for Israel. It's a direct rejection of an earlier set of positions that Trump took during his first term in 2018, 2019, and in 2020, when he put forward a plan, a peace plan, he called it, that was known as the Peace to Prosperity Plan. That he called the deal of the century. And it spoke directly about Israeli control of the territory of the West Bank. It didn't use the term annexation, but de facto annexation, of course, has been underway in the West Bank for a very long time. So this is really shifting the U.S. position. It was in November of 2019, the Trump administration announced that it was no longer going to consider the Israeli settlements, the West Bank settlements, to be illegal. Now, once you say they're not illegal, it means that they can belong to Israel. They can be annexed. That's the implication of that. It really, at that time, reversed the long history of U.S. positions that did not fully recognize the illegality of all of the settlements, including in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, and in, of course, in Gaza. But it did reverse that, and I think it was seen at that time as a new approach. This was part of his whole new bargain with the world that was recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the existing settlements and over ultimately most of the land of the West Bank, including all of the Jordan Valley, which he said was necessary for Israeli security. So he used language in that report about Israel not having to uproot any settlements. And it said explicitly, and I'll quote here, that it would incorporate the vast majority of Israeli settlements into contiguous Israeli territory. That means that they would be part of Israel. That's what annexation looks like. De facto annexation has been on the way, happening for a long time. De jure annexation, meaning a legal announcement, has been more limited. The de jure announcement came around the Golan Heights, which Israel annexed along with its illegal annexation of East Jerusalem back in 1981, recognized by no other country in the world until 2019, when Donald Trump, in his first term, recognized both of those annexations as legal, said explicitly that the U.S. now recognized the annexation of the Golan Heights, recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. And when he came back to the U.S., he bragged about that to his funders, to his supporters, and bragged about this notion of granting Israel the right to sovereignty as if he were a sovereign emperor granting a different vassal king the access to that land. So this is a very significant shift. Whether this is going to last more than a week, we don't know. This president has a history of reversing himself pretty frequently. So whether this is going to be his new policy, we don't know. This may be just until he can be sure that he has the support of the Arab governments in the context of the Abraham Accord, which, of course, requires them to normalize relations with Israel without Israel giving up its occupation, its annexations, its apartheid policies. So this is all very tactical at this point, sending the other diplomats, sending the Secretary of State Rubio, sending Vice President Vance, sending his own envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his own son-in-law, Jared Kushner, both of whom, of course, have outstanding relationships, economic relationships with the Gulf rulers. Their family investment corporations have gotten billions of dollars in investments from the Arab governments in the Gulf. So all of this is tied up with his legacy, as we heard from your earlier commentator, but also just from what it's going to take to maintain even the phase one of his current plan, which is the ceasefire. Right now, Israelis are still being killed every day by Israeli fire. Not at the same level, thankfully, that we saw before the ceasefire went into effect, but they are still dying from Israeli fire. They are still denied access to sufficient food, medicine, water, all of those things.
Yeah.
So the genocide itself is not yet over. And it's in that context that we're seeing this claimed shift by the Trump administration.
Okay, Phyllis Bennis, we will have to leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.